Mr Cummings, you said a minute ago that you thought that the drugs trials directive was not, that came out of Europe was not very useful.
That's not a question. Do you want me to answer?
Am I understanding correctly? What was it you were saying about the drugs trials?
I'm not a specialist. Lots of these things, the point is not what I personally think, I'm saying what other people think. The point about the clinical trials directive is that Nobel scientists stood up and said, this is madness, this thing is slowing down the trials of cancer drugs, it's making them more expensive, it's literally killing people, and there's nothing we can do about it. So what my opinion is, I'm just quoting what they said.
Okay. Are you aware that Andrew Whitty, who's the chief executive of GlaxoSmithKline, a large drugs company located with several factories in this country, has said Europe has gone from 27 fragmented, independent, not talking to each other regulatory authorities in the healthcare space to one. That's a big deal. Have you heard that he's said that?
I have not.
What do you think the implications of that statement from the head of GlaxoSmithKline is?
What's the impact of it?
The implication?
Well, as I said before, a lot of big multinational companies like the Brussels system. Since Adam Smith wrote, it's been an obvious agreed idea that big businesses use regulation to crush entrepreneurs and competition and small businesses. A lot of big businesses love the EU system precisely because it allows them to lobby and crush their competition. What he says has nothing to do with, it doesn't change. I will take the opinion of Nobel Prize winning biologists over the opinion of the CEO of the head of a big pharmaceutical company on the wisdom or otherwise of the clinical trials directive.
Mr Cummings, do you think it is realistic to suggest that you can have small companies entering the pharmaceuticals industry? Isn't it inherent in pharmaceuticals, given the need to have experiments and safe drugs, that these are companies that must operate at scale?
Totally wrong. I think you don't understand what's going on in those industries. If you look at what's happening now in pharmaceuticals, for example, there's a whole revolution in computational biology and synthetic biology, which is integrating pharmaceutical companies with Silicon Valley and the whole revolution in computer science. So I think the premise of your question is completely false.
Mr Cummings, do you not understand that the reason that Glaxo think it's a good idea to have one regulatory standard across the EU is that that means that they can, at an economic price, produce drugs for the whole EU, whereas if and when there were 27 different sets of standards, it's uneconomic to produce the drugs to the quality which people need for the benefit of their healthcare.
I think that's complete rubbish, I'm afraid. I don't think the argument holds water. What I think is true is that there are various ways in which very, very big multinational institutions have an interest in trying to preserve the power of the European Union. And in various ways they think it makes some aspects of their business convenient. But the decision in this referendum is not about propping up the interests of established multinational corporations. We should be thinking much, much, much wider than that. We should be thinking about the entire system, the entire ecosystem of businesses and research and development.
So you're not interested in the views of any large companies in this country?
Of course one's interested in the views, but you can't be... But you have to understand how these companies operate. If you're British Airways...
Okay, let me give you another example.
Do you want me to answer the question or not?
I think you're about to punt off again, and I need to ask you another question. Hitachi, which is a large multinational company, has said that it invested in the UK in order to access the whole of the EU market, and unimpeded access to the EU market is fundamental for our position in the UK. Do you not see that leaving Europe puts at risk inward investment from companies like Hitachi?
Heard all the same stuff on the euro. Don't buy it.
Mr Cummings, do you not understand that the issues at stake with belonging to the EU are quite different from those at stake for whether or not to join the euro. The euro issue was confined solely to the question of what the exchange rate mechanisms would be. Belonging to the EU is, as Mr. Phillips set out very well in his questioning to you earlier, about the benefits to the British economy of joining the single market. Do you understand the distinction, therefore, between belonging to the EU and belonging to the euro?
I do understand that. I'm not sure if you understand the distinctions
Sorry,
about what the definition of the single market are.
As I've explained to you, the questions are asked by the parliamentarians and the witness.
So what's your question then?
My question was whether you understood the difference between the EU and the euro.
I do understand that distinction, yeah.
Good.